Good afternoon, restaurant fans and restaurant folks. This is Steve Barnes from the Times Union bringing you another edition of Table Hopping Live, where we talk about the restaurant and the food industry, what's been going on, how things are gradually coming back, and how things are changed, if not permanently, at least on a significant basis, temporarily. And one of the people that's been really involved with response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been Mark Quandt, who's the longtime executive director of the Regional Food Bank of Northeastern New York. And he joins us today to talk about what the food bank has been doing over the last several months and their plans for the future. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, Steve.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So, as an overview, before we get into the current nitty-gritty, give people an idea of the scope in a normal year of the food bank. You know, you serve the regions you serve, how many pounds of food, how many meals that translates to, that sort of thing on an average year, and then we'll get into the craziness that is 2020.
Right. So the Regional Food Bank serves all of Eastern New York, above New York City and Westchester County. So we serve 23 counties, Canadian border down to the New Jersey border. And we have about 1,000 different agencies we serve. Last year, in 2019, we provided 41 million pounds of food to those agencies. And that equates about 34 to 35 million meals worth of food that we provided over the course of the year. This year has been totally different.
Okay, so first of all, where does that food come from? I mean, tens of millions of pounds of food. Where does it come from?
Yeah, we have three basic sources of food. The core of food banking is centered around our collection of donated food from the food industry. They donate food that's still perfectly good to eat, but they can't sell it. Maybe it's overproduced, it's nearing code date, an error in production, whatever it is. It's food that companies determine they can't sell. Instead of throwing it out, they can donate it to the food bank. So that's really how food banks got started. In addition to that, we receive some food from the federal government, mainly through what is, I think everybody knows, the price support program for farmers. So the federal government buys food. If the market is in some way compromised or whatever, there's a surplus of a particular type of an item, the federal government will buy some of that to keep the prices strong for farmers, and then they process that, make it into different products, and then that type of food gets donated to organizations throughout the country. But food banks are probably the primary distributor of that food. The program that we work with is called TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. So that's a second source of food, federal government food, and the third is food that we buy. We call it our co-op program, because when you're dealing with donated food, it's just impossible to get everything that a food pantry needs or a soup kitchen needs. So we buy food and then we resell that to our member agencies to hopefully become as much as possible a one-stop shop. So we can get them at that product at better prices. It saves agencies money, and it's certainly convenience-wise, it's a tremendous help. So those are our three sources of food. The biggest source is the donated from the food industry.
So how quickly as the pandemic was developing and then things started to really shut down in March, how quickly did it become evident to you that this was going to be a singular event in the history of the food bank? How fast did people increase their need?
It was immediate. We still count the day, March 16th is like the day everything changed.
Right.
So I kept getting calls. Actually, you remember back when we were scheduled to have our mac and cheese bowl. It was that weekend, and we were still, as of Monday, we were still planning on having the mac and cheese bowl, which you and the Times Union generously sponsor. And that was supposed to be Saturday. And then as the week progressed, things just changed very quickly. Siena College closed. They weren't going to, that's where it was supposed to be held. And so we weren't able to hold it there. So immediately for us, it's like, we just got a $60,000 hole in our budget because we lost this event. And then the week continued to progress. By Friday, schools got shut down and businesses were closed, and we saw what was happening. It was pretty obvious what was happening. So we actually, and I started getting calls after the mac and cheese bowl got canceled, all the media kept calling about what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? And it was way more unknowns than knowns at that point. But we knew things were going to be very different. So we even scheduled a press event for the following Monday, the 16th, just to kind of deal with all the press and let them know that we're here. We know there's going to be an increased need, and we're here to respond to it. And fortunately, we had a good inventory of product at that point, but literally it was that week. We started getting calls from City of Amsterdam. They were immediately interested in, is there anything we can do to provide special food? Schenectady County, Albany County, some other different sites began calling us, and they knew that that people started getting laid off, and it was going to be a tough road ahead. What we didn't know right off the bat is how long this was going to go on. So I crafted a guesstimate budget to cover us over the course of the next couple of months, not having any idea what I was doing.
Right.
And how long it would last. And obviously it's gone on much longer than that. And I way underestimated how much money we were going to need. So it was immediate, right? From March 16th, we count everything from that day forward.
And percentage wise, I mean, how much increase has there been in call for your services and what's the food you can provide?
50%.
50%.
50%. So if you go back, we were a little bit ahead of last year from January 1 to March 13th. A little bit ahead. I don't even know what that percentage was, but immediately afterwards, when we started calculating out by the end of March, we were up we were up over the same half month, about 40% or so. That's how quickly it went up.
Yeah.
And then it just went up more than that. And it gradually went up to netted at 50%. I think one of the months might have been April or May was up 60% just for that month. But so right through the end of August, we're up about 50% over last year from mid-March to the end of August.
And what are the variety of reasons for this? I mean, is it people are laid off? What are the other things besides people not having jobs? I mean, what other factors are at work here?
Well, that's the primary impact. That so people were out of work, and everybody was out of work, it seemed. And the schools, fortunately, I don't know what would have happened if the schools didn't do what they did, but they continued to provide meals, and in a lot of cases they were delivering meals to kids. So at least the most vulnerable kids had some coverage. But that's not perfection either, because it's difficult for the schools to really get it to all the kids, and for the families to, especially in urban areas, I think sometimes harder to get the food. So that was not perfect. So there was definitely going to be a gap in food meals for children, but it was mostly that people were out of work, and we knew it was going to be big because all the businesses were closed. So we just ramped everything up. The agencies we serve started seeing more and more people coming to them for help. So a lot of them were new people, and a lot of them were people who might have been coming, but now they really had an even higher need. Plus, we started getting calls for special distributions. Like right off the bat, Schenectady County wanted to know, is there anything we can do? Can we provide a load of food for people in the county? And immediately we were able to do that. So we started this whole special distributions where we would just send loads of food, truckloads of food to a site, and they would do distribution. I will mention though that people who were quarantined, that was another thing that we didn't know anything about until we started working with the municipalities. So I was in Albany County, the way they described it is they were required to have people quarantined and to monitor, make sure that they actually stayed in their home. And they said, we can't force people to stay in their home and not make sure they're also eating. So the county stepped up to provide some additional resources. So certainly people who were ill or who were quarantined was another cause, but mostly it was just people being out of work.
Now, did the wholesale food industry, because restaurants shut down, or the ones that didn't shut down resorted to takeout as they were required to. So was there at least initially? Was there a glut in the food pipeline, in the wholesale food industry that you were able to benefit from?
Yeah, it's a great question to ask. It was crazy at first. In March and into April, it was just crazy because the other side of that is everybody remembers that on March 14th, when everything was shut down, people went crazy in the stores. They went in and they wiped everything off the shelves, produce, meat, dairy. And what that did is it caused the whole industry to get backed up. So we pick up at stores every day. And then we pick up produce and, the blemished produce, whatever,
Right.
unsaleables. We pick up meat that's past, they put meat out on the shelves for a certain number of hours. And if it's not sold, they pull it. Same with dairy. So we got huge amounts of food like that every day. That went down to maybe 20% of what it was.
Wow.
So we lost a big source of food right off the bat. But at the same time, then we started getting inundated with what you just mentioned. Companies like Cisco and US Foods, that they lost their markets. They lost the schools. They lost all the restaurant business. They lost almost everything. And they were okay with the non-perishables, but with perishable product, they had no market. They had already ordered
right
food
because they're ordering weeks and even months in advance.
Yeah.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, and they donate regularly to us, but all of a sudden it was like truckloads of stuff. And we were trying to just balance everything because we had a big decrease on one end, massive increase on the other end. And what made their donations more difficult for us is that most of the programs we serve are food pantries. That's the majority, that's the volume we serve. And so that's individuals receiving food or family
Right.
receiving food. Food service companies are used to more bulk packaging. And so there was a lot of stuff coming in food service packaging, like gallons of mayonnaise, gallons of big blocks of cheese, and
Sure.
huge things of sour cream, 5-pound buckets of sour cream, which obviously you can't give to a family. So we had a lot of mismatches. We had a lot of good food coming in, but not food that would match where we needed to get it. So it was difficult until we had to begin to monitor what they gave us. So every day they'd call us, they'd say this, or they'd send over a list of what they had. And we would, in a sense, I hate to do it, but we had to cherry pick some of it because we knew we weren't going to be able to move some of the products. So it was crazy for probably well into mid-April, maybe late April, just balancing the losses and the gains, which were not 100% true gains, but balancing that all out. So that was tough.
Among the things you did were drive-through pantries at places including the Albany International Airport.
Yep.
Tell us about those efforts and how many people came, because our photographers got astonishing photos of the lines of cars.
Yeah, we actually stole the idea from other food banks. So food banks were on the news nationwide constantly because it wasn't unique here. That's
right.
That's the other thing about this particular situation is that all disasters typically are local or regional. And we haven't, fortunately, in our area had huge disasters, but the flooding in Schoharie and Greene County back in 2011, that was a big disaster, but it was local. Here, it was everywhere.
Right.
So seeing how some other food banks were managing the distribution, we just latched on to the idea of the drive-throughs, because we've always done mass distributions where people come and there's tables set up and they go through the line and they get their food. You couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
So we adopted that concept of drive-through. We would send the food to a site and they would have it set up so that people would be driving through. They might have a walk-through line in a city also, properly distanced, but most people would be coming in cars and picking up. And so the trunk would be open and volunteers would go down the line and they put items in the trunk. So that really has been the concept that we've used by far, the majority, since we adopted it probably in April.
How many of those have you done, and what was the biggest volume in a single day?
I think it was over 1,000 cars in a day, believe it or not, out in Montgomery County. So we've done hundreds of the drive. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but hundreds.
Hundreds
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and you mentioned this at the beginning when you talked about the mac and cheese bowl, because we really weren't sure if this was going to happen. And, this was something that came from a table hopping reader. And I brought the idea to you and your staff. You made it happen. It was a decade ago, and there had been, consistently between, 40 to 50, even $60,000 in income. And suddenly that was gone.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it in a bit. Another one of your biggest fundraisers you're going to have to do differently this year. So your demand is up by 50%, and yet your conventional fundraising avenues are either completely canceled or profoundly changed, and probably going to bring in less. How do you adapt? How do you, and people don't have money. I suppose the very top 1% or still have money, but for the general part, I would think, are your donations down in terms of cash donations?
No, actually, they have gone up.
Oh, nice.
Fortunately, yeah. So that's one reason that we held the press conference right away. We wanted to be out in front of things as much as we could, because we knew not only was the need going to go up, but we knew obviously if the need was going to go up, we were going to have to do more, and we were going to need more money to do that. At the same time, as you just mentioned, we were going to get hit. We knew mac and cheese bowl was gone. We had some sponsors who had donated money, and fortunately they let us keep that money. But most of the money from that event comes from ticket sales.
Right.
So
and
that was
2,000 people coming through the door
right.
to sample mac and cheese, and that certainly was not possible.
That was all gone.
In the third week of March.
Right, that was all gone. And we had our golf tournament coming up in June. It was already mid-March. We're already in the planning phases, but it was obvious we weren't going to be able to pull that off. And that's over $100,000 fundraiser. So we did that outreach right away, and we had good media coverage. Fortunately, the media came to the press event we held, and at least it got the word out. And then we continued to try to do outreach through social media and in any way we could to let people know what we were doing. Fortunately, there was a great deal of interest on the part of the media just on the stories. There was so much negative news. I think media was happy to pick up on something positive. And one of the positives was, all the healthcare workers and their dedication. And that was certainly positive, but also the food distributions we were doing was in response to a need that came upon people very quickly and was very dramatic. So there was a lot of news coverage of us every day. Right. Our name was in the press, and people picked up on that. Our experience has been that when there is an economic downturn, when things get tough for people, giving changes, and people who are able to give. Not as many people are able to give in those times, but people who are able to give adjust their giving priorities and focus on more basic needs, on human needs. Food is obviously a big one, shelter, clothing, things that people, they know their need, and obvious. So people responded very positively. But still, our golf tournament, we raised money from that, but it was about half of what we normally raise.
And coming up later this month is your big annual Chefs and Vintners Harvest dinner, which would attract hundreds of people every year. Yep. How much in a good year? How much did that all told did Chefs and Vintners bring in? Yeah,
we netted last year somewhere between 140 and 150,000 on that.
So, you could have up to 50 people socially distancing that, but you decided not to do that. You took a different tack. Tell us. It's September 24th, and yes, there is still a dinner component, but tell us about it and how it's going to work.
Well, just kind of an overview of the event itself to give you an idea is that it was always an event. It was a big chef's event. It was really focused on the meal, and every year we would have 6 chefs, and each chef would prepare one course, and that was served throughout the night. So people there was a cocktail hour ahead of time and wine tastings. And then the chefs would do their 6 courses, each course paired with a wine. So that was our foundation. And we really, really wanted to try to keep some semblance of that so that we kept it going. there's so many people who have come to love the event. They come every year. It's a very special thing for them, and it's a very special thing for us. So we wanted to maintain some of the character of the event if we possibly could. So we went to the chefs, and they were on board. They wanted, they're into this event also. So we came to the conclusion that we would be able to put together a takeout, if you will, dinner, 4 courses this year. So we have 4 different chefs, each preparing a course. And what we're going to do is all that's going to be put together, and we're going to, people are either going to be able to pick it up, or we're going to do deliveries or bring it to central locations for people to pick it up if people want to receive it. So a sponsor gets a certain number of dinners. If normally in a normal year, they would have 6 tickets to the event, whatever, or 10. So this year they're not going to get it, but we're going to make the meals available to them. And a number of people are saying, you know, we're going to use this as an opportunity to celebrate. It's been a tough 6 months, and they're going to use it as an opportunity to gather and celebrate and remember their support of the food bank. So we're building, in fact, we did some taping today. We're putting together a virtual program just to recognize all of the companies that have been supportive as sponsors, the chefs, and we're going to have a dinner, and we're going to try to make it as much as similar to our event as possible, although it's obviously going to be virtual.
Okay, and so the date is Thursday, September 24th. Tickets are $175, and that includes dinner for 2 with wine that can be picked up at the food bank, or they're arranging for delivery. As you mentioned, there will also be some additional pickup places regionally, and the chefs contributing are Jose Artesh of Shogun in Del Mar, Ken Keene of 677 Prime in Albany, Rick Orlando of Flavor Maker Spices and Longtime of New World Bistro Bar in Albany, and Mark DeLoss of Clifton Park-based Mazone Hospitality. And the wines are being provided by Dr. Constantine Frank Winery and Lamoureux Landing Wine Cellars. So now the easiest way is just to go to your website. So if you'd give us that address, please.
Sure, regionalfoodbank.net, and all the information will be there.
And so far, I mean, how are reservations tracking? We're still, you still got 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
They've been good. Our sponsorship is not as high as it was last year, but we're probably 70% of our sponsorship from last year, and that's the core of the funding. So that's great. Our dinner sales have been pretty good. And we have some new people who have decided that they want to participate that way. So we're very grateful for that. And we'll have a mission auction that night. We just did taping for that. So we have a couple of our sponsors will be matching donations that night also. So we have we have a silent auction or an online auction that's going to be available. So we have some other opportunities for people to donate or contribute as part of the event. So we're hopeful. It's certainly better than not doing the event, and it'll be very nice. I think it'll end up being, people will enjoy it. They're going to get a great meal if they sign on for the meal, and I think they'll have a good time also.
So looking forward, can the food bank continue to meet the need? Because I mean, it looks like this is what the rest of this year looks like. Yes, people are gradually going out a little bit more, and New York has had some extremely encouraging results in terms of infection rates and people who are sick, and death rates. They're very low. They're trickling along way at the bottom of the scale across the country compared to across the country, and those are all encouraging. But a big part of that is because people are being safe. They're staying in. They're following, and that means not going out to big events. And an awful lot of people still aren't back to work, or they're back to work at a lower income rate than they were at. So can you continue, and what else needs to change if this is life for the next 6 months?
We can continue. Our commitment right off the bat when we've had our first press event was that fortunately we had a strong inventory at the time, and we made the commitment that we will be here. If you need the food, if you want to set up a special distribution, the answer will be yes. and we will make sure you get not just any food either. It has been fresh food, fresh produce, meat, dairy. It's really been high quality food, and we've been dedicated to that. We've had some help because there was some federal government help along those lines, and also the state created the Nourish New York program, which has given us the opportunity to purchase a lot of New York agricultural products. So that's been a huge help. So we've been working with our national network, Feeding America, to make sure that food continues to flow in, and we're gonna make sure that it happens. So if there's a need, we'll make it happen. Financial support is key to that success, and keeping the food donations flowing in also.
All right, thank you. We've been chatting with Mark Quandt, who has been, how long have you been at the food bank, Mark?
37 years.
Executive Director of the Regional Food Bank of Northeastern New York. It's headquartered in Latham. They serve 23 counties, providing tens of millions of pounds of food and tens of millions of meals every year. It's been up 50% this year. If you want to help, if you're interested in the Chefs and Vintners Harvest dinner, go to their website, which is regionalfoodbank.net. Thank you, Mark, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Steve.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
Until next week, I'm Steve Barnes with Table Hopping Live. Be well,